Hi everyone, and welcome back to my devlog. If you're new here, I post weekly videos logging the progress of the new third-person looter-shooter mobile game I'm developing, so consider subscribing to follow along. The task I had planned for this week was to start adding enemies into the game. This included having to get the actual alien models and animations, and program some basic enemy AI. The programming I of course planned to do myself, but the game art and animation are a different story. In general, there are three approaches I could take for this. I could create them myself, I could pay someone else to make them, or I could purchase pre-made asset packs online. Option 1 is probably the most respected approach, and if I had endless amounts of time, I would. I want at least 10 unique aliens in the game to start with. I'd estimate it would probably take around 2 weeks per alien, one to model and another to animate. In total, that's around 20 weeks just for the aliens, and not to mention I'm still in the learning phase of how to use Blender. Option 2 is probably the best approach. I had already written up a list and described in detail all of the aliens I had in mind for the game, but when I contacted a company to ask for a quote, they came back with this. That's around $475 per alien, and so $4,750 for all 10 of them. Unfortunately, there's no way on earth I'd be able to afford that, let alone pay for half an alien, so that was definitely out of the picture. Option 3, as you probably guessed, is the one I went with, and after working with the aliens I got in the pack I bought online, I'm so glad I did. They're seriously good quality and fit my vision for the game perfectly. Of course, I acknowledge that using pre-made assets takes away from the game, but being a solo indie developer with no game art experience, or money for that matter.
Oh, I have 3 kids and no money! Why can't I have no kids and 3 money?
I'm more focused on making a unique gameplay experience, and actually getting a product out there. Speaking of gameplay, now that I had the aliens ready and all sorted out, it was time to start working on implementing some of the basic enemy AI. Now, to be honest, I've never really worked with artificial intelligence before, so this was definitely a learning experience for me. And because my game is very different from most, there weren't many YouTube tutorials out there that I could just pull out when I needed help. What I'm referring to here is the unique player movement system I have that separates my game from all of the other mobile shooters. In my game, you use your mobile phone's accelerometer to move. This means you can only face forwards towards the nest when moving, and your rotation range when aiming is limited. It is therefore very important that enemies should not be able to put the player in a position that could cause frustration due to this limitation. In order to overcome this hurdle, I needed to ensure the following. Aliens should never get behind the player and should always be within their reach when attacking. I achieved this by making them not actually target the player. Instead, they target a position in front of the player based on a predefined attacking distance. I then ensured that each alien never exceeded the player's distance from the center, no matter where they were in the level. Next, aliens should attack in an ordered manner. This is to prevent hordes of aliens from overwhelming the player. And so, I made it so that they would organize themselves around the player when attacking. Lastly, aliens must always face the player when attacking. I achieved this by creating a locking system, which makes the enemies strafe when moving. Now, each enemy can be in one of 3 states: wandering, inspecting, or attacking. In the beginning, every enemy is set to wander around their starting position by choosing a random location to move to within their wander radius. When they reach that position, they have the probability to perform a random wander action, be it feeding or looking around. When wandering around, the alien can transition into the inspecting state and start looking for the player. This comes down to 3 different senses. Sound, if a player moves within the enemy's awareness range or shoots within the enemy's audible range. Sight, if the player is within 30 degrees of the enemy's line of sight and is within their visibility range. And finally touch, if the player shoots the enemy. When an enemy starts inspecting, they first look towards the direction of the player, and then, if the player is spotted, the enemy begins attacking. When an enemy starts attacking, they begin by locking onto the player. They can only physically attack the player once they have locked on. Once locked on, a random attack is performed at specified intervals of time. However, this changes based on what the player is doing. If the player is running away, the enemy performs an offensive attack, and if the player is close to the enemy, they will perform a defensive attack. Next week, I'll start implementing these attacks and start making them actually do damage. But for now, that's going to do it for this video. If you enjoyed or learned something, help me out with the YouTube algorithm and smash that like button. And if you haven't yet, subscribe to follow along on the development of this game. Anyway, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next week. Take care.